Okay, so welcome to the Ultrarunning Sam podcast, James Nobles.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Appreciate you coming on, and it's I always say this just lately. It's been short notice, but I quite like acting on the spur of the moment and seeing when people have done well in races and just sort of getting in there as quick as possible and asking some questions, because I think there's nothing worse than, although it's nice to hear a podcast about someone's race experience, if you're hearing it like 6 months later, it's not quite the same. So I like to get in there as quick as possible to have a chat. But like I was saying before we hit record, and I know who you are. I know you won the Dragon's Back, but I don't know a lot about you. So for my benefit and for the benefit of the listeners and viewers, would you mind sort of giving your background in running and how, you can go back as far as you like to your childhood? You can sort of just tell us your background and how you got into running and how you got to where you are now, basically.
Yeah. I guess going back a very long way, like I never ever used to be any good at it. I remember like back when, I don't know, sort of junior school, when we had to do things like cross country, like I would just do utterly terrible at those things. So I don't think it's something that genetically I've happened to have been handed a good set of cards on, but it was probably like at university, so prior to being at university, I played like a lot of sport, played a lot of rugby. And then it was at university, I kind of fell out of love a little bit with playing rugby. And I just needed something else to kind of keep my fitness going, and also just help with a little bit, I guess, from like the mental health perspective and that side of things. So it was there where I started running, and I didn't really do anything very serious. Sort of like a lot of it was kind of very traditional stuff, like doing 10Ks on the road. Like the majority of it then was road-based stuff. And then I eventually started transitioning into off-road running. I've sort of spoken about elsewhere, but like I helped a friend on a Bob Graham round. And that for me really was like a massive introduction into this sort of world of ultra running. And then from there on, like I'd done things such as the Bob Graham round. I think that was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago now. That was the first sort of big major event that I sort of set myself. The year after that, I did the Paddy Buckley round. The year after that, I did, so this is kind of last year now, we did the Lakeland 50 and the Charlie Ramsey round, and then the Bob Graham, all in the same summer. And then that took me right through to now. And we happen to have had like a child or should I say a baby in December. And that's just thrown a whole new thing into the mix as to how to try and train around having a baby. But yeah, that's kind of the overview of it. I think I've happened to have stumbled across something that I really do love doing, and I quite enjoy just spending and committing the time to trying to get better at it.
Yeah, I think that's quite a deep dive, isn't it? Like going straight into like doing what were you doing? Were you muling for a mate on the Bob Graham?
Yeah.
So having that as your first experience of sort of a big trail fell running event, you didn't take the usual route of sort of doing marathons or half marathons and then try in a short 50k or something like that for your ultra marathon introduction. You went straight in.
But when I helped on the Bob Graham, I did. So I mean, I was utterly petrified by the idea of like helping. So it was on legs 3 and 4. So collectively, I think they're about like 30, well, just short of 30 miles. So like the amount of anxiety I had going into like trying to feel like I was prepared enough to help somebody on a Bob Graham across those 2 legs. But actually, like it was, I suppose, like as you go longer, the pace slows down a little bit, and it's amazing then just like what your body is able to kind of push through. But yeah, so it was sort of just jumped from, and there was obviously a good bit of training in there, but it did just, it ramped up really to like training for the Bob Graham. And then once I kind of got my head around that was something that I could do, then everything really just fell into place from there. I love being out, having big days in the mountains. And yeah, after the Northern Traverse, I guess big, like long efforts over multiple days. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you're starting out doing those kind of, it must give you a lot of confidence to know that, if you've organised your own Bob Graham and you've done that, and then you've done all the other rounds as well, there's nothing, I suppose, in any UK trail running or ultras that can be thrown at you that you haven't already seen, kind of thing. But I suppose now that you've gone, the multi-day ones with the Dragon's Back, and then with the Northern Traverse, how did that sort of fit into the way that you prepared for races? If you've sort of done your own sort of adventures before in the rounds and everything, how did you sort of focus on going into such a massive all-in-one hit race of the Northern Traverse?
I guess straight from the off with the Northern Traverse, like I knew like I wasn't going to have as much time available because of having a baby. I wasn't going to have as much time available as what I did for training for the Dragon's Back. So I really just had to, I mean, don't get me wrong, I still like managed to get out like an awful lot. But I just had to be like really focused with what I was trying to achieve within it was about 12 weeks ish, like leading into the Northern Traverse. So I planned it all out. Like I don't have a coach, I'm self-coached, but I still like try and plan like everything out. So I almost planned like the full 12 weeks out on a day-by-day basis to what I was trying to do on a day-by-day basis, and then what I was trying to kind of achieve within a week by week. So I was aiming for around about the same amount of volume as what I was doing in the Dragon's Back, and maybe just a little bit less on the elevation front. But the bit that really kind of went by the wayside quite quickly was like going to the gym. I just didn't have like the extra time in the day to be doing that. I put all my eggs in the running basket, and then I did a little bit of sort of mobility work and body weight exercises just as and when I could at home. But to be honest, like that was really minimal compared to what I did for the Dragon's Back. But the actual like the training for the Northern Traverse, like I listened also to like a lot of these kind of podcasts and read like quite a bit around this sort of area. And I think the more and more I've listened to and the more and more I've read, like people aren't preparing for these events by like, well, some people aren't preparing for these events by going out and doing like really, really long sort of 40, 50 mile training runs. They're kind of going out and maybe doing like up to 20 miles. And that for me is what I did in the run up to this. Like I'd maybe do 20, 25 miles maximum, but then I'd always do like those back to back on a weekend. So each weekend I'd do at least 40 miles across the 2 days. And that was kind of how I went about it, really. Like I'd get a good amount of training in the week, and then I'd just focus on like the longer distance stuff on the weekend. So I was hitting, I don't know, between like on average maybe like 80 miles a week, and then I had like a couple of weeks that were a little bit higher than that, and then I got ill 4 weeks out from the Northern Traverse, which actually was, I think, a blessing in disguise, because it just meant like my body like was fully recovered from the hard training going into it. So the training itself, for me, wasn't too dissimilar on the running front to what I'd done from the Dragon's Back. It was just that I hadn't done as much in the gym, maybe the strength and conditioning work.
Yeah, which I suppose the strength and conditioning work really comes into it, doesn't it, with the Dragon's Back, with all the big climbs, having strong legs. Not that the Northern Traverse doesn't have any big climbs, but comparatively the elevation isn't the same, is it, for that kind of race? You're not going up Crib Rock, are you?
No, you're not going up there. You're not going up there. But like for the Dragon's Back, I'd done like a fair bit of upper body work too, just because I knew like I was going to have in the Dragon's Back, I was going to rely on my poles quite a lot to really try and like propel me up the hills. And I was actually quite concerned about that going into the Northern Traverse, having not done as much like upper body work, that I was like, is my upper body just going to sort of disintegrate from like nearly 200 miles of running with poles? So but luckily it held together.
Yeah, awesome.
Your
sort of, what are your views then on, because it was interesting what you were saying about sort of long training days for those kind of events, because over time, I mean, I've been around ultra running for, I'm trying to think now, when was it? So it's over 10 years now, and the stuff that I used to read about training was like going out and doing really long days, long weekends. And more now, people are sort of, I don't know if it's more of the professionalization of the sport, I don't know, money coming into it. It seems to be a bit more focused on, because when you first start doing ultras, maybe sometimes you need that confidence boost, don't you, of knowing that you can go that distance. But when you start to train a bit smarter, you kind of, you know, you can do that distance because you've done it before and you've done it in races. You don't need to be doing like 50-mile training runs over a weekend. You know that you can work on, you know, specific. I always get this word wrong. Specificity. There we go. for a race, and you don't need to do those long miles. You can get like up to 20 miles. And this is, you know, I do a bit of coaching, and this is the sort of thing that I say to the guys and the girls that I coach, that once you've done ultras, you know your body can go that distance. It's diminishing returns if you're hammering yourself every weekend. Fair enough if you get to the point where you can do a 20-mile long run every weekend, and you know, when I'm fit and healthy, I can do that, and I know I can sustain that. But I can't be doing 30-milers at a weekend and then the following week go and do another 30-miler or 25-miler. It's just your body can't cope with it. Do you think that, in your opinion, as you've come into the sport in the last 5 years, sort of 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I'd say last 5 years or so.
Yeah. Do you think it's changed the way that you approach races, the way things you've read? Because like you, I'm a big consumer of podcasts and books and anything to do with training. I love.
I guess when I came into it, like I definitely didn't like listen to podcasts. I probably didn't do too much reading around. So I basically fell into, I think, like what you were just talking about there, in that, so prior to the Bob Graham, like I was so nervous that I would never in a million years be able to run like over 60 miles. And so just from like a peace of mind perspective, like some of my, in fact, I probably did about 4 like runs that were maybe over 40 miles, like in preparation for the Bob Graham. Just that in my head, I knew I'd gone over 40 miles. Like, and those 40 miles might have taken, I don't know, 8 hours to do. And the Bob Graham's going to take you nearly 20 hours or more to do. So it wasn't from the time point of view, it was just the distance that I was like quite worried about. But then over time, as I guess, like I've realized that, I guess your body's probably quite good at like adjusting to these things, like as you're doing them. And also, like, I guess I've got a little bit of experience now that I know I can also do these things. So I've done like the Bob Graham and some of the other rounds, and like when you put your head to it, I do think you can do it. So yeah, so it's been a combination, I guess, of experience and I guess some success in like achieving the round, or getting round the rounds, and also some like race experience as well, which I still don't have very much of whatsoever. But yeah, it's that self-belief that I think you can do these things that you're setting out to do. Whereas now, like I've got that experience, I've got the self-belief that I can do it. So I can really just focus in on like the actual training and maybe like getting myself fitter and stronger and more capable at performing as high as I can.
If you sort of looked into having a coach, or are you sort of happy with your approach? And because you've obviously had success coaching yourself,
I'm a Yorkshireman, so trying to get money out of the pocket is difficult to do. So I don't know. Like for me, like I'm very good at holding myself accountable. Like if I start, I typically don't really drop sessions. And I'd give myself quite a hard time. Like if I was dropping sessions. And I feel like the plans that I can put in place are probably, I might be wrong here, but are potentially as good as what I might get from a coach. So I struggle at the moment at this point in time to like see the added benefit of getting a coach. And I could be completely wrong in that. But yeah, I can hold myself to that like level of account and get the training done.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that a lot of people struggle with accountability, and that's why they have a coach. But if you're quite willing to put in hard work and figure out things for yourself, then there's no reason why you can't have success. In fact, I'm actually writing, it's going to be a very short book, but I'm writing a book at the minute about self-coaching, like a bit of a guide to self-coaching, because I fully believe that there's people out there that don't get a coach because they don't want to be told what to do, or their life doesn't quite fit with having a coach and being told what to do, because their life changes too much. And I think there's a group of ultra runners that just don't need a coach, because they can just put it all together themselves. And it can be, if you read up and do your research, it can be just as good as a coach. coaching you, through a plan. So there's no reason why everybody needs. I mean, most coaches will say you always need a coach, but I'm not that coach that says you need a coach, because I've done it for years. I still don't have a coach, and I get lots of abuse about that, not having a coach and coaching people. But I fully believe that if you can put a plan together for yourself, be committed to it, and hold yourself accountable, then there's no reason why you can't continue to coach yourself for years.
The only thing for me, and I fell like a cropper to this within the Dragon's Back, is I think a coach should actually be quite good at limiting your training.
Yeah.
Whereas for the Dragon's Back, like I went so hard, and probably harder than what my body could cope with. So I ended up, like at the beginning of last year, with some like really, really severe shin splints and other kind of types of fatigue-based injuries. And that took me actually like 3 and a bit months to get my body like right from. So I think maybe in having a coach, like there is also the opportunity to avoid those things happening. And so the way I'm learning is literally by making lots of mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
So yeah. I know now like what to look out for, like from a stress point of view, like in my lower legs. And
which would make you a good coach, that you can pick up on those things.
But maybe in having a coach, I probably wouldn't have been injured last year, and it would have been quite helpful for someone to say, do you know what, you maybe just need to back off a little bit and just let your body recover before pushing again. But again, like I learned from that. I adapted my plans like this time around, and actually like I went into the Northern Traverse actually like physically like feeling like I was held together a lot better than what I was going into the Dragon's Back.
People don't always listen to coaches either. Sometimes I won't drop my clients in it, but there's a couple in particular that I know that they're like doing sneaky extra runs and stuff when I've been describing a certain mileage or volume, and I see, and I'm looking on Strava, or I'll see on Instagram that they put something on, and I just put a little the little like eye emojis on there to show that I've seen it, and then I get a text message saying sorry coach. But anyway, so just thinking about the Northern Traverse then, just for anyone who doesn't sort of know what the race is, there's genuinely people listening to this, watching this, who won't know what the race is. Could you sort of describe the route and what's particular about that race?
I guess the route actually on this one is like really simple, and it's fairly iconic. So it follows Wainwright's coast to coast path. So it starts in St. Bees, just sort of north, well, it's not north, like west of the Lake District. And you go from there, like up the coast a little bit, and then you work your way all the way through the Lake District, through to Shap. And that's the end of the Lake District section. You then go into like the north of the Yorkshire Dales, and you traverse through there. Get to the other side, then there's this lovely section through the, I think it's like the Vale of York, where it's just pan flat, majority on a road. And then you get into the North York Moors, and then you've got the final section through the North York Moors over to the other coast, and you drop eventually into Robin Hood's Bay 300 kilometers later. It's a non-stop race, which I'd not done one before. So this was by far like taking me a lot further than I'd ever gone in one attempt. It's a truly like brilliant event organized by Aurea Events. And if anyone's like done any of theirs before, I think they probably know like what to expect from them, but like really, really well organized. The logistics around it are like top notch, first class. And you've just got access like I think 4 or 5 different points along the route to like your big drop bag. So you've got 15 kilos of stuff you can kind of transport with you across the country. And you can just keep getting access to that. And at those stations too, you've got like plenty of food and drink. And if you wanted to have a sleep, you can have a sleep. There's some tents always set up outside, and you can go and have as much or as little sleep in those as you want to. So it really is. It's a brilliant event. And yeah, for me, it's also a really, really grueling event as well, I think, for everybody involved in that one.
Yeah. What's the kit list like for that? The compulsory stuff, because for such a long effort, you know, comparable to like sort of the, you know, like the spine race and everything, the massive kit list you've got to have for that? What sort of things are you expected to carry?
Do you know, I don't think it's anywhere near as extensive as what it is for the spine, and probably like for good reason as well. Like, you're not doing it in the middle of winter, and you're not maybe in as much, like, it's not potentially quite as remote in certain sections. So you have to carry the exact same stuff as what you need is to carry for the Dragon's Back. So you just have to have like a insulated layer, some spare base layers, emergency like sleep, well, so the emergency blanket or the emergency bag, should I say, all of your food, compass, map. I've probably missed a few other bits, but like I was able to fit it like really comfortably into a 12-liter sort of Solomon bag. The only thing maybe for people to like, if they're considering doing it in sort of future years, is just like the amount of water that you need to take, because you've got about 40 miles or so to go in between like the aid stations. And once you get out of the Lake District, there are some places where you could fill up, but depending on what time of day you hit those places, you might not be able to get access to water. So it was just, for me, I had I think like 2 liters of water, that's what I'd refill. And I'd go with that between the checkpoints. So, and then all the food.
Yeah. What went right, and what, you know, if there's anything that went wrong during the race, what were sort of your good your good outcomes and your things that you're going to learn from that race?
I've definitely got a good few things to learn from. Like, it was far from plain sailing, but in terms of things that went well, I think because I hadn't gone that far, I was well aware of it, like going into it. So I didn't know quite like what the pacing was going to be like. And actually, I think the pacing over the first 100 and probably like the first 140 miles was like really, really good. I'd stuck with a group of about 5 to 6 people through the Lake District who'd done a lot of this stuff before, and I was really comfortable at that kind of pace. And then I ran with Rich Lazenby through the Yorkshire Dales. Unfortunately,
I ran. Sorry to interrupt your story.
No, that's all right.
Shout out to Rich. I haven't seen him for ages actually, but we met on an ultra. What was it? The Spire Ultra, one that goes around Chesterfield, and it was like my first race back after an injury, as usual, and it was horrific. It was absolutely shut it down. Torrential rain all day. Everybody had like sores, were chafing. It was horrible. And I met him probably about a quarter of the way around, and just stayed with him the whole way around. He's such a nice guy, and felt like I knew him really well by the end of the race. But then we've tried to meet up a couple of times in the Peak District, because, you know, I'm just like south of the Peak District, and he's obviously up there. So we've still haven't managed to arrange meeting up. So. But I keep thinking I need to get him on the podcast to talk about Dragon's Back and everything. So I'm going to do that at some point. So Richard, if you're watching, if you're listening, we will meet up. Sorry, back to your story.
No. Well, and if you do meet up, let me know, because I'd said again to like Rich that it'd be really good to organise a run like somewhere up near Sheffield or in the Peaks, wherever.
Yeah.
But yes, I ran with Rich, and like the two of us like were just chatting away for the majority of it. Like, things got a bit very, very, very boggy when we were on top of like the 9 standards just outside of Kirkstephen. So there was like some good low patches going on up there. It's just freezing cold, and like our feet and bodies were like soaking wet. But yeah, like the two of us like just had like a pretty good time really together for probably the best part of 12 hours. And then unfortunately, like Rich picked up a bit of an injury, which saw his kind of race come into an unfortunate early finish. And then from there on, like I was on my own then from there on, and I just tried to like pick up the pace. So like probably the second half of the race, or at least in my head, the second half of the race actually felt quicker than the first half. And especially in those last 40 miles, like there was the chap behind me, like Robin. I don't know, it felt like that there was a big burst of energy coming from him behind. And so it really did feel like we had to properly race the last 40 miles, like all the way back into Robin Hood's Bay. And that probably pushed me, I think, more than I've ever been pushed before in a race. Like I was utterly spent when I got to the end.
Yeah.
But overall, I think that the pacing like did go really well. And the other thing that went really well was like the nutrition side of things. Like I just, I had the right amount of food with me. So like on the Dragon's Back, like I put a timer on my watch for every 30 minutes. But on this, like I sort of every 45 minutes roughly, I was just eating something. And I just had about, I don't know, 6 or 7 different things that I just kept cycling through just to try and avoid like me getting sick of any one particular thing. And I had a couple of stomach issues like early on in the Lake District, but once they'd settled down, everything there actually, like food wise, it just kept on going in. And I think that was probably like one of the reasons why I was able to sustain a bit of pace towards the end. Like it really was like just an eating competition, at least for me in my head towards the end. And then stuff that went wrong. The first bit, like I was running in, like I'd got a new pair of shoes maybe like 2 or 3 weeks like prior to the race, and I'd run in them like a good few times, and I was conscious more than anything. I was like, oh, if anything, I might get a few blisters, but like I've had these kind of shoes before, and they've always been like brilliant, so I wasn't that bothered about that. But I bloody I didn't adjust the frigging laces on them. Or I didn't adjust the laces properly. Like I put that little lace lock in so that my heel was like well kind of held in, but I didn't like release enough tension from the laces like down the tongue of the shoe. And it was maybe like 40 miles in the Lake District, I started getting these like stabbing pains going on in my feet. And I took my shoe off like when we got to Shap, and it was severely bruised like all around my peroneal tendons. And I just thought I'd like sprained them. I didn't twig at that point that it was because of my shoelaces. And I carried on going like with that blooming thought for another 100 miles. And it was only when I got to, I think it was Richmond, where I realized like the issue wasn't that I'd sprained these tendons. It was because like my shoelaces were just far too tight. And like it was the pain from those was absolutely excruciating. And then the other bit was just the amount of like my feet were like literally rotten by the end. Like the blisters were just disgusting. And I was rushing too much in the checkpoints to try get out as quickly as I could, especially towards the latter parts of the run. And I just didn't, other than putting a bit of like sort of talcum powder type stuff on them and changing my socks, I just didn't pay enough attention to the state that they were getting in and the maceration that I had towards the end. Like it's only like sort of 10 days on that I can like properly sort of stand and move about on them. It was horrendous, like the state of the underneath of them. And it was just especially on the downhills, like every time I put my foot down, and especially if my foot rolled to the side, like I could feel like the skin underneath my foot just moving. And it was, but I think a lot of people seem to struggle with blisters and maceration on that particular race. I definitely wasn't the only one who had that, but yeah, in hindsight, that and the tightness of my shoes did not go well at all.
Yeah, you were quite fortunate then, weren't you, that you were still able to finish that race, because a lot of people, even blisters can put people out of races, can't they? The fact that you managed to keep going. So do you think it was the sort of fear of, because I've been there, and I know the fear of being in a podium position and the guy behind you is either gaining on you or you just think that he's gaining on you. Do you think it was the sort of pressure of that of feeling like you were under pressure from a move coming behind that made you sort of make some poor decisions in that regard then?
No, because like that was in terms of decision making, that was only from the last checkpoint on. So at Lordstones, like I think I was about an hour up on him, like going into Lordstones. And so I tried my best just to get like a 10-minute sleep there. So I ended up spending about 45 minutes probably in total, like at that checkpoint, thinking that those behind me would also have a similar amount of time in that checkpoint. And anyway, I didn't manage to like get any sleep. So I wasted time there, and I was just like pissing around like with my bag, like just not
Faffing.
really, just faffing. So it took me a long time to get out of that checkpoint. Whereas Robin, he came in, and I think he was probably in and out within like 15, 20 minutes. So he was straight away then, not necessarily on my tail, but like he was only a couple of kilometers away.
Wow.
And I kept sort of, because you can see on like the open tracking, like I could roughly see like whereabouts he was, and I could see that he was like really gaining on me. And so as soon as I'd figured that bit out, it was like we probably did run at least 80% of that, or at least I ran about 80% probably of that last section. And it was relentless then all the way to the end. But that pressure of having Robin behind, one, made me go a hell of a lot quicker. So I probably wouldn't have finished within 48 hours if it hadn't have been for Robin applying what I thought was pressure. And also like the amount of adrenaline that caused, like just, I was really tired, like going into Lordstones, like just sleepy tired. And actually the adrenaline of knowing that he wasn't too far behind, just like I didn't feel like I was going to fall asleep after that. I was hallucinating, but I wasn't going to fall asleep.
Wow. What sort of hallucinations did you have? I always like to ask people if they've had hallucinations, what they were.
These were different to what I'd had. Like usually in the past, like I'd seen like, I don't know, faces on the lichen of the rocks and things like that, which I think is really common. But on this one, like I kept like, it was as if like I was running and I was like, I kept seeing myself as my wife, which was really like weird. It was like this kind of like outer, just like a bit of an outer body experience. And I was like, I had to keep telling myself, I was like, no, like you're James, like you're not Laura. And I haven't been able to like wrap my head around like why that would have been. But yeah, like I had that actually like an awful lot. And then the other thing that I had was like every time I looked down at my watch, especially probably in like the last maybe 10, 12 miles, like it was as if like it was, I don't know, a watch from on like Star Trek or something, where there's like a little what are they called? What's the word? I can't think of it. Sort of like a little person kind of popped out of my watch and like was then like sort of telling me like how far I had left to go. But like I really enjoyed it because it was like quite, it felt like it was entertaining. It was quite like motivating to almost have this person like what I thought was telling me, I don't know, you've got like 3 miles until the next checkpoint or something like that. So yeah, these were like the hallucinations on the whole on this one were pretty entertaining, really.
There must be something in the whole seeing yourself as your wife. That's got to be to do with like subconsciously, like you being aware of your wife probably worrying about you during the race, probably.
Potentially, and because like Laura, she's been in similar situations too, and like I know, so Laura's done like the Bob Graham round, and like on those kind of things, like I'd run with her and like give her like loads of encouragement. So in a way, I think it was like, I don't know, kind of seeing her like encouraging me, like I don't know, in that maybe there's something somewhere in that, but yeah, it was weird, whatever it was.
Awesome. So speaking about your wife Laura, then, so you're a new dad, fairly recent new dad, aren't you? December, was it? December last year?
December, yeah.
How are you feeling about being a dad?
Oh man, it's the best thing. The best thing ever. Like she's 4.5 months old now. It's really is like fantastic. And so far, like we're able to like kind of work things that we're both still able to like do like a good amount of training around her. So yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. Obviously just don't have quite as much time as what you had before, and we've only got one right now. So yeah, no, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I know you feel. My girls are growing up now. They're almost teenagers, so I've gone through the
different challenges.
Yeah, it's the challenges are different now. Sometimes they'll come and run with me, but you just end up having to sort of figure out your routine a bit smarter. And you realize when you have kids, you realize how much time you wasted before kids, like not making the most of your time, because then when you're a dad, you realize you've got to make the most of the opportunity that you've got. So it makes you, appreciate your time a bit more, doesn't it? I think when you start training.
100%. I think because beforehand, like if I didn't do a run in the morning, I could just do it in the evening. Whereas now, like I just had to get it done like in the morning. Like that was the window that I had. And then like I'd have work, and then in the evenings it was really like all about trying to help and support Laura with Maver. So yeah, there was no like just switching things around easily and doing it in the evening. So if I ever did miss a session, it was because like I hadn't got up early enough in the morning to like get out and do a run. So yeah, it really does make you realize like beforehand, like just how fortunate it is that, well, at least it was in my scenario, that I was just able to kind of run at any point really in the day. Whereas now, like you've just got those windows of time where it's maybe possible.
Yeah, you've got to do it, and you've got to build up those husband points, and then you've got to build the dad points as well now. So you've got two lots of points you've got to build up, and you got to spend them wisely. That's what I've learned.
Well, I think maybe doing something like the Northern Traverse, that definitely puts you in debt for quite a long time.
Yeah.
2 days of just running across the country.
Yeah. That's good. If you could, if there's anything more selfish, I'm not sure what it is. Spending 2 days on your own running.
But the good thing is, like, look, it's good that like Laura, she also like loves kind of doing this sort of stuff. So she also traversed the country as well, though, like in the car, which was unbelievable to see her and to see Maver like at different points in the country over the course of the 2 days. It was massively motivating.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's nothing like seeing your kids at the end of the race or mid-race for motivation.
Yeah. Especially if you're having a bit of a lull at that point in time, or some harsh words from Laura, like also worked a treat.
Yeah, as long as it's not trying to convince you to stop, that's the worst.
Yeah. Or if you're even considering it, like, no, she's definitely like, you've not spent the last 4 months like doing all this running not to finish it. Yeah,
that's a good crew, very good crew.
Yeah.
What have you got planned for the future then? What big race? Because obviously it's a great race to be winning over that kind of distance. What have you got your sights set on now? Are you going to go back to shorter stuff, or are you thinking even longer?
I'm trying to get a place if I can in the Spine for next winter. I'm on the waiting list at the moment for that. So I'm just hoping like maybe sooner rather than later, like I kind of figure out whether or not it's going to happen or not, because like if it does look like there's the potential to do it, then I kind of need to get my head into that like as soon as I can. So my plans were, if I did get into the Spine, that I was going to attempt to do the Steve Parr round in the Lake District later in this year, as like a good sort of build-up event to doing something like the Spine. If I don't get in the Spine, then I was going to have another crack at the Bob Graham and maybe do it as a solo self-supported, but to see whether or not I could beat the time that I got doing it as a crewed one sort of 4 years ago. Nice. I haven't got any more like actual races like planned in for this year, just because well, for me, like I don't want to have too many of them. I like to really focus in on them and do the training for them, and then like when I get to the event, like there's a lot on the line for me to try and get to the other side in the best form that I possibly can.
Yeah, it's the why, isn't it? If you've got the why for a race, then you're less likely to quit and give up on something like that, aren't you? If you've planned something, for a big race, if that's your focus for like 9 months or a year out from it, then you're putting your heart and soul into that race, aren't you? And you're very unlikely to, unless your legs fall off, you're gonna finish that race, aren't you, and do your best.
Hopefully that's kind of like my approach to this. But I mean, I absolutely love being in these events, but I do like to be able to give things like my all. And so like maybe having like, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 of these kind of things each year to work towards, for me, like at the moment, like works really well.
So what's up with the Spine race then? Because if you won the Dragon's Back, that's a montane race, isn't it?
Yeah.
So surely there should be you should be top of the list for getting a place to be spine.
Who knows?
Surely someone can pull a string for you somewhere.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'd really like to be on the start line for it though next year. So if that comes either via the waiting list or via other means, then yeah, I'd really like to just roll my sleeves up and just like dig into the training for that and see what could happen there.
There's always quite a few people that give up their places closer to the event, and I know people have sort of said that if you've got your name on the waiting list, don't think it's a done deal, but don't write it off as thinking, you know, I'll leave training, you know, until I know I'm going to get in, because oftentimes it's like November, isn't it? December when people find out that they're in.
Which I think I wouldn't be able to from a motivation point of view, for me, like I wouldn't be able to deal with that level of uncertainty. So I probably need to know, at least in my head, like whether or not by early summer it's happening, and then if it is happening, I can like go all guns blazing on the training front. If it came around that maybe a place was offered in November, December time, for me, like I wouldn't take it, like because I wouldn't be like physically or mentally prepared to do it, I don't think.
So if any of the big wigs at Montaigne official are watching or listening, get your act together and get change of place. Little advert for you there.
Appreciated. Yeah.
No worries. So if people want to sort of follow your escapades and your adventures and your race and everything, what's the best place for people to sort of follow you? Are you sort of active on social media or not?
No, not really. Like I've got like an Instagram page, but I don't put too much on there. But if anyone wants to sort of interact via there, then they're more than welcome to. And equally, like things like Strava like this, but I don't tend to, like, other than like putting my runs on there, like I don't really do too much on it. I just like to do a lot of the work as much as I can, like kind of behind the scenes, and hopefully turn up on the day.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because there's a lot of people that like to put a lot of stuff on Instagram, but then don't give the impression of doing lots of training and racing. But actually, when it comes to it, it's a bit different.
Everyone to their own. Like I think, like I do. Whilst I don't post a lot on Instagram, like I do really enjoy seeing what other people are doing and seeing like where they're running and doing a lot of their training. So yeah, it's just if I put stuff on there, it typically might be like a picture of a mountain or something like boring rather than anything else. I certainly don't put stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well, speaking of training, I'll send Rich a message and see if we can sort out that Peak District run.
Yeah, I'd be very keen for that.
Yeah,
very keen.
See if we can arrange that. Brilliant. Well, appreciate you coming on and chatting, and it's good to meet you, and you know, even though it's virtually, and sort of get to know your backstory and your goals for the future. And I wish you all the best for your future endeavours. And thanks for coming on.
No, cheers, Sam. It's been lovely to have a chat.
Brilliant. Cheers, mate.